Fox News reporter Jacqui Heinrich questions Karine Jean-Pierre regarding the student loan debt forgiveness program, COVID-19, and how it all connects to the HEROES Act. Real Clear Politics reporter Philip Wegmann raises a phenomenal question regarding TikTok and our national security. And lastly, Ben Shapiro is wrong about COVID-19 vaccines. All of that and more here on The Paul Brad Show. Welcome to the Bald Brad Show. It is Wednesday, October 26th, and as always, I couldn't be happier than to spend this fine morning doing the Bald Brad Show and hanging out with all of you, my friends and true American patriots, where we come together as a community of conservatives, Republicans, go over the stories of the day, and bring you all the news and information you need to know about. So if you want to join us here at the Bald Brad Show and you haven't done so, hey, hit that subscribe button. If you're over at Rumble, hit the plus and give us a comment down below. And if you're listening on any of the podcast airwaves, Apple, Google, Spotify, heck, folks, you can find us and listen to us anywhere and everywhere. Leave us a lovely 5-star review. Not only would you be helping a conservative, but most importantly, you'd be supporting getting conservative thought and ideas out there to new viewers who haven't seen our content or our channel. So your help and support would be greatly appreciated. Hit that like button, but also double check to make sure you hit that bell notification icon so you're notified when we upload or go live, which is every Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, with Supernatural Saturdays and a sprinkling of politics on Sunday. Be notified by hitting that bell notification icon and jumping into our lead story of the day. If you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button. We have Fox News reporter Jacqui Heinrich questioning Karine Jean-Pierre regarding the Biden White House, the Biden administration, implementing the student loan debt forgiveness program, utilizing COVID-19's national emergency in conjunction with the HEROES Act, and kind of how does that all play out? So let's go ahead and hear her answer to a question. She may or may not answer it here, folks. I'm sure you can kind of guess which way she's going to go in terms of answering the question. Let's go ahead and roll it.
Thanks, Karine. Today I asked the president if COVID was still a national emergency, and he said it's a necessity to deal with to make sure it doesn't become one. His answer would suggest that perhaps it's not a national emergency right now. So is it fair to call it a national emergency under the HEROES Act to justify student loan cancellation?
So the student loan cancellation, first and foremost, that was decided by the appropriate agencies. That was the tool that we were going to use to make sure that we give relief to Americans that need it. We should step back for a second and understand why the president took that action when it comes to the student loan.
Here we go again, folks. We know this playbook all too well here on the Bald Brad Show. Anytime she doesn't have an answer to a question, let's talk about the past. Let's circle back, like Jen Psaki used to say, her predecessor, how we got here, what we did to initiate it, how everybody felt about it, who thought it was icky, who thought it was good, what dates were going to be implemented. I mean, she just does this because she doesn't have an answer. Let's just see how long this answer to a question that was never asked goes on for. Let's go ahead and roll it.
When he came into the office, clearly there were people, Americans who were, having a hard time dealing with the economic situation that the pandemic was causing, right? And we had the former administration who mishandled the COVID, the reaction to COVID, how we would move forward out of COVID. The last administration boggled that, really. And so the president took action and made sure that people were getting shots in arms, and we were moving to a place where things could open, schools could open, businesses could open. And so at the same time, as the president is thinking through how getting out of this phase, that phase of the pandemic, there's the student loans. There are people who are really squeezed by the pandemic, and so he wanted to make sure that when we lift up the pause, that we gave people a little bit more breathing room, and that is where the student debt relief comes from. And we understand once that pause is lifted, there's still going to be people who are going to have a difficult time, and so just because we're in a different phase of the pandemic, as the president has said, COVID is still a problem. And so that's how we came to that decision to move forward with our assessment on how we're going to provide that student relief to middle-class Americans. And also, let's not forget, 90% of borrowers who are going to be receiving this debt relief are making less than $75,000 a year. And so all of that matters when you're lifting up something and when you're lifting up a pause that has been lifted for about 3 years, knowing that the pandemic has been a problem, knowing that COVID is continuing to be a problem, knowing what the American people, middle-class families have had to go through, the president was trying to making sure that he didn't leave anyone behind and making sure that he didn't forget those middle-class families.
I hear what you're saying.
For the love of God, folks. What do you say? Where do you start? Where do you start with all the nonsense that was said? Blaming it on Trump and talk about how, well, everybody was able to get a shot in their arm. Yes, because of Project Warp Speed, which was instituted under the Trump administration. That's why the vaccines got out and got out on time. She's going to talk about, well, we really just want people to have more relief. You know, they're being squeezed. But yet you literally have the highest inflation that we've seen in 40 years, where Americans are being squeezed out every single month. And now you're double screwing them because the Federal Reserve, and rightfully so, are increasing interest rates. But now, once you give them this relief, then when they go back to take out more debt to pay off for a house, of which you just utilized as an example of how that relief is going to be spent, well, now they're going to be paying astronomical mortgage rates because of inflation that was done under your administration, because you wanted to pass out checks like they're hotcakes, where you would have done it, should have done it wisely in terms of not everybody needed one. Some people were still at work. Some people had their businesses open. But you don't want to talk about that, Karine. And you go on about this whole thing of, well, we know there's some people are going to get relief, but not everybody's going to have relief. But we're still going to spend a ton of your money. God, you guys, I'm so sorry to put you through it. But hey, I got to sit here and go through it too. That is one of the worst diarrhea mouths that I've seen in quite some time, answering a question of which was never asked. Why do these press briefings, you guys, with her? In terms of, we're going to continue to cover it, but I mean her, because everybody asks her these questions, and the press are catching on, which is why they continually just to say the exact same question over again as their follow-up question. Oh, I got another question after Karine, and it's just the same one because she never answers the first one. But if she's going to do these, then why doesn't she just stand on that podium herself and just think about these questions herself? Because that's all she does do. She'll listen to a question, air quotes for listening, come up with her own question, and then she's going to answer her own question and pretend like the reporter just asked that question. For the love of God, folks, I'm going to hit my head against the wall. It's so freaking amazing. I get a kick out of it, though, at the same time, because it's so frustrating that all you could do is laugh, because politics is purely comical, and this clown show that from administration out there continues to give us content, folks, of which YouTube wants to censor. So again, if you haven't hit that like and subscribe button, support the channel. Let's continue.
On all that, I guess my question is there another, perhaps a better mechanism to do that? Because the whole program is caught up now in litigation, and a lot of this legal argument is that it can't be a national emergency because of actions that the administration has taken elsewhere. So I wonder...
So I actually disagree with you. What is happening is there are opponents out there of the student loan debt relief who do not want to give middle-class family a little bit more breathing room. There are opponents out there, many of them are Republicans, who do not want us to make sure that those 90% of Americans who are making $75,000 or less are getting that actual benefit to be able to put money down on a house, to be able to start a family.
She actually said something truthful. Yes, everything you just said, Karine, is true. We don't want to pay for somebody else's debt. I had no involvement in it. They went down and did it voluntarily. Nobody twisted their arm to do it. They wanted to go and get the major basket weaving that they should have known was not going to pay six figures to pay off that six-figure debt they just took out. And you got to love it how she's like, well, they could take that money and put it down on a house at a higher interest rate, of which if they would have just paid it off and been wise with their money, then they would have had a cheaper interest rate or mortgage rate, of which they would have had under the Trump administration, rather than you knuckleheads that now have a freaking 8.2 inflation rate. CPI's gone up. It's going to continue to go up. By the way, you got lumber going up for new houses that are being built. So those that want to move somewhere else are going to be paying more expensive rates in terms of purchasing a piece of property in a house. I mean, the things just, you can go on and on with this, folks, but it's so rich here. It's so rich how everything from now to the midterms, like I've been saying, is just going to be, it's going to be Republicans' fault. The Biden administration's killing it, you guys. They're doing a fabulous job. Just look around. It's like heaven. Everything is great. There's not a damn thing to complain about here from the Biden administration.
They are upset that we are trying to help those very, very Americans. So that is what is happening. This is pure politics that we're seeing out there. It is not, and the way the president sees this is not partisan.
On the national emergency front then, what is the criteria the country would have to meet for it not to be a national emergency, or is that even a goal?
So here's the thing, we cannot forget that COVID is still a problem. We just had Dr. Jacques here talking to all of you. He wanted to be here, and we wanted him to be to all of you because you guys communicate with the American people. And we want the American people to know that there is a new vaccine out there, and they need to get that shot in the arm because that new vaccine is going to help them ahead of the winter months. So clearly, COVID is still a problem. We're trying to communicate very clearly with the American people how important it is to continue to get that vaccine. So you have the COVID response director here. You have the president who, in front of the American people, took his shot to send a message. So again, we are still dealing with COVID. We're trying to do everything that we can to make sure that it continues to not be a disruptor, right? And the reason that it's not a disruptor is because of the work that this president has done in the last 20 months. Okay, I'm going to move on. Go ahead.
What the hell? What the actual hell? What are the qualifications? Didn't name a single one. And, oh, well, COVID's still a problem. Go get your booster, which we'll get to in our last segment with Ben Shapiro. Folks, it's content. These people are a bunch of idiots. This is who is running our country. Democrats are still voting for this person, you guys. Oh, for the love of God. If there's anybody that's just mimicking Joe Biden, it is Karine Jean-Pierre, because she doesn't have a clue. Biden doesn't have a clue. Harris doesn't have a clue. The Treasury Secretary doesn't have a clue. I mean, Alejandro Mayorkas, the DHS Secretary, doesn't have a clue. I mean, you go down the list of people that don't know what the hell is going on. They all don't have a clue. And that'll come up into our second segment here, folks, with Real Clear Politics reporter Philip Wegmann. If you haven't already hit that like and subscribe button, please do so, folks. It does support the channel. Philip Wegmann brings up a phenomenal question, actually the other day, regarding TikTok. And this is something that's been going on with this platform because there's been these stories that are coming out about TikTok and our national security, about them tracking, pulling Americans' data, giving that intelligence to the Chinese. And so he does bring this up with Karine Jean-Pierre, but I want to do a little bit of backstory because all he does is say the Forbes article, and we should actually know what the Forbes article is saying before he goes into that question with Karine Jean-Pierre. It says, a China-based team of TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, plan to use the TikTok app to monitor the personal location of some specific American citizens, according to materials reviewed by Forbes. The team behind the monitoring project, ByteDance's Internal Audit and Risk Control Department, is led by Beijing-based executive Song Yi, who reports to ByteDance's co-founder and CEO, Rubio Liang. The team primarily conducts investigations into potential misconduct by current and former ByteDance employees. But in at least 2 cases, the internal audit team also planned to collect TikTok's data about the location of a U.S. citizen who had never had an employment relationship with the company, the materials show. It is unclear from the materials whether data about these Americans was actually collected. However, the plan was for a Beijing-based ByteDance team to obtain location data from U.S. users' devices. Oh, there's more. TikTok spokesperson said that the TikTok collects approximate location information based on users' IP addresses to, among other things, help show relevant content and ads to users, comply with applicable laws, and detect and prevent fraud and inauthentic behavior. That's a bunch of smoke, folks. We'll continue. That's not the full truth. But the material reviewed by Forbes indicates that ByteDance's internal audit team was planning to use this location information to surveil individual American citizens, not to target ads or any of these purposes of which were just stated. Forbes is not disclosing the nature and purpose of the planned surveillance referenced in the materials in order to protect their sources. TikTok and ByteDance did not answer questions about whether internal audit has specifically targeted any members of the U.S. government, activists, public figures, or journalists. TikTok is reportedly close to signing a contract with the Treasury Department's Committee on foreign investments in the United States, which evaluates the national security risks proposed by companies of foreign ownership and has been investigating whether the company's Chinese ownership could enable the Chinese government, in actuality, the military, to access personal information about U.S. TikTok users. This could be a potential massive national security breach of tracking the location of our government officials, folks. And Phil Wegmann, this went so unnoticed by so many people. I know I kind of brag about him a lot here on the show. Of course, there are the Peter Duceys out there, the Jacqui Heinrichs, but there's also the Philip Wegmanns, you guys. This guy not only writes extremely well on Real Clear Politics website, but just listen to his questions. He actually hones in on important issues that not everybody else is looking at that time. Everybody's so zoned in on the camel where there's a bunch of gnats everywhere else, or rather, if you want to go biblical, they're zooming in on the gnats when there's a giant camel standing right in front of them. That camel is TikTok or national security and what's going on with that. And he questions them so perfectly on it, folks. Let's go ahead and roll it. Again, this is Philip Wegmann from Real Clear Politics.
One last one. Go ahead, Phil.
Thank you. There's reporting out of Forbes that TikTok's China-based parent company, ByteDance, plan to use the TikTok app to track the physical location of specific Americans. My question is, does the administration still believe that it's safe for Americans to use TikTok? And does the White House believe that TikTok presents a security threat to upcoming elections, given that they are partnering with organizations like the Federal Voting Assistance Program to provide information about elections?
So I'll say this. Haven't seen those reportings, but I'll say this more broadly, that the president is concerned about the power large social media platforms have over our everyday lives, and has long argued that tech platforms must be held accountable for the harms that they cause. And so the president has been very consistent on that. And the president has long been a supporter of fundamental reforms to achieve that goal, including reforming Section 230. As you've heard us say many times, his stance on Section 230 is not new, and it's something he made clear on the campaign trail as one. This continues to be his position on that specific story. I can't comment from here. And so I'll leave it there as how he sees social media more broadly.
Bill does do a follow-up here, but if she's going to read from the binder, can she at least read and answer a question that was actually asked? None of that was about Section 230. None of that was about publishing and having places like YouTube, Twitter actually be held accountable for what's being published on the platform. Nobody's talking about that. The question was about the national security implications of TikTok taking U.S. citizens' data and giving it to the Chinese government, predominantly their military as well, tracking government officials and utilizing that against us, as well as having election implications with that. Coming from a Democrat Party that was just so upset about Republicans questioning the integrity of the election, and now when you actually have real reporters talking about the possibility of the integrity of the election that's coming up being compromised by a platform that's in partnership with the Chinese government, potentially has a partnership with the Chinese government, and is going to be giving our data out there. You think this is something you would want the president to know about and actually go on? And I have a feeling they do know about this, you guys, because TikTok has been on the radar for quite some time. And like Philip Wegmann said, this is not the only time that TikTok's been brought up and kind of been going out there in terms of users' data and where it's going. Let's continue with the follow-up here.
I understand that there are these concerns about big tech and social media, but the TikTok and national security implications seem to be unique. And this isn't the first time that TikTok's ties to China have been scrutinized. I know the administration has made use of TikTok several times over the course of the last 2 years. Will the president and the White House continue to make use of this platform, given that there are serious red flags?
So again, let me talk to the National Security Council team on that specific report that you are laying out at this time, and then we'll respond.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everybody.
She says that we'll respond, but if you recall, just I want to say it was a week ago, Philip Wegmann asked her a question, and she said something very similar, like, "Oh, well, let me go find out, and I'll get back to you." A week goes by, and I want to say it was about Japan or something like that. And he gives her the same exact question, and he goes, "Yeah, you never got back to me." And she goes, "Oh, you're right, I didn't." I mean, that's literally your job, right? To answer their questions, and she can't even do it, of which she didn't even have to answer the question, right? She just had to go ask somebody else for the question. She can't even do it. So she can't answer questions on the podium. She can't answer questions that she couldn't answer then, having to go get somebody else to bring it back to somebody else to give them the question. She can't do anything. I mean, she's literally the worst press secretary we've ever seen. I'm not always just trying to rip her, but for the love of God, give me a reason not to rip you, lady. Just answer the questions. That's all we're asking here on the Bald Brad Show. That's all we're asking. I'm not irate. I'm not pissed. If anything, I just think it's freaking hilarious. She's getting paid 6 figures to do this job. I mean, how many of you could say that you get paid 6 figures literally not to do the job that you were asked to do? I mean, it's not hell. I can go stand on that podium and look like an idiot all day and not answer anybody's question and spin things left and right. That's not hard. That's literally not hard. Just give me any question. I can just spin it. Give me any question. You could do it. It's not hard to sit there and dodge questions or read out of a binder of prepared answers. Joe Biden does it, and we all know he's not there. He's given a card that practically tells him how to breathe. He can answer questions. He fumbles through it, slurs his words a lot, okay, fights with his teleprompter, but he gets through it, and he gets paid a lot of money to do it, and he sucks at his job. So there's a common theme here with this White House. If you suck at your job, make sure you apply to the Biden administration because you'd be sure to get hired. Speaking of people sucking at their job, you got the CDC saying a bunch of nonsense. You got the Biden White House saying a bunch of nonsense. You got people that were pushing this whole COVID thing and everything around it saying a bunch of nonsense. Well, Ben Shapiro here in our last segment, if you haven't already hit that like and subscribe button, please do it now. It does support the show. He's getting kind of, it seems like, whacked upside the head almost by these outlets because of his take on the vaccination. And I'm actually siding with Ben Shapiro on this. I know it's a shock, folks. I watched Ben. I've been watching him for years. But I think the way that they're kind of playing it almost is like, you're right all the time, but we got you now, sucker, because you were wrong regarding these vaccinations. And it's a little bit more of a gray area than that, and we'll get into it here with this article. It is quite lengthy, folks, so let's follow along. There's some video clips here for you. Ben Shapiro has long been a strong advocate for the COVID-19 mRNA vaccines, believing that taking them was a social responsibility measure that might save grandma and even slow or prevent the spread of the virus. Well, it is still true in a sense that it would slow things down, not necessarily the spread of the virus, but there is some truth that it would slow things down for yourself in terms of you not getting as sick as you would have gotten if you didn't have taken it. Now, with the data that was given at the time, he was correct. Based on what was given to us and told by us, he was correct. On Tuesday, Shapiro stated that, like many others, he had been deceived about the efficacy of the vaccines, particularly with regard to the ability to prevent viral transmission, which is what you would kind of expect from a vaccination. So really, it's more like a flu shot than anything that just kind of sits there and makes sure that you don't get as sick or you don't get sick at all. But in that case, with this shot from the vaccination, you still get it. You still transmit it, which was not sold to us that way. On Tuesday's episode of the Ben Shapiro Show, Shapiro stated that it is now perfectly clear that we were lied to. Absolutely right. And we were lied to at every high level and from very, very early on by both the vaccine companies in terms of the ability of the vaccine to prevent transmission and by our politicians who apparently knew better. Shapiro's admission and sense of betrayal comes in part after the Pfizer executive stated on October 10th that the company did not know if the COVID-19 mRNA vaccine had developed by BioNTech would prevent viral transmission before the drug went on the market. I mean, literally just came out and lied then. Oh, it's going to do this, it's going to do that, and it was sold. It was sold to the American people of something of which it didn't do. In addition to being enraged by small admission, Shapiro took issue with the possibility that the Biden administration knew as much over a year ago, but had nevertheless stood by its original narrative. And we have Joe Biden here, horse's mouth, saying this, folks.
You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
Yeah.
You're okay. You're not going to get COVID if you have these vaccinations.
Yeah.
Interesting. You're not going to get COVID. You're not going to transmit it if you have these vaccinations. But remember, if you said anything like that, literally like a year ago, you'd be censored, deplatformed, removed for saying something that was factually true. I mean, hell, you could still say that a man is a biological male on Twitter and still get censored for it. It happened to Jordan Peterson, Charlie Kirk, the editor of the Federalist. I mean, the editor-in-chief of the Babylon Bee. I mean, you name it, they've all been censored for saying something that's factually true. Despite his public confidence, an article cited by Ben Shapiro and published in the Washington Post on October 22nd suggested that the Biden administration knew as of summer 2021 that the vaccines did a far worse job of blocking infection than originally expected. As potency waned, still the political imperative remained, meaning they're pushing this whole narrative that it's going to do this, it's going to do that, but it doesn't. In July, former White House COVID response coordinator Deborah Birx admitted she too had known the COVID-19 vaccines were not going to protect against an infection, added that we overplayed the vaccines. We talked about this on the Bald Brad show, and we're actually fearful that we'd get removed here off YouTube for stating such a thing. But this lady knew, and they sold us something completely different. We were all bamboozled. While elements of the government and the scientific establishment knew the truth, they weren't keen on intervening when others were castigated for saying it out loud, like Ben Shapiro, me, and others. Look, I was a proponent of COVID-19 vaccines as well. I got the vaccine. I got the booster shot. Now, by the time I believe I got it, if I have the timing down correctly, I already knew that I would still receive I would still receive or get sick, basically, and then I could get others sick. Mostly I took it so that ultimately I wouldn't get as sick. That was kind of my thinking behind it. At this point, I already knew that you can contract and give it to other people and all that other stuff. The Washington Post, which just reported that the vaccines had proven ineffective at blocking transmission, previously stated that most pernicious, an anti-vaccine talking point, especially when voiced by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Don't you just love how you could just say all these obvious truths now? And 2 years ago, you get deplatformed, you're a crazy conspiracy theorist, you're a nutso and wacko, and they went after Ron DeSantis of many things. They went after him, especially in his previous debate that he just had the other night. But let's hear it from Ron DeSantis here about COVID-19.
People say you need to mandate, right? They're justifying these mandates, but we know, and the data is very clear at this point, COVID vaccines are not preventing infection, okay? It's just not. Gibraltar is the most vaccinated country on earth. They just locked down their Christmas celebrations. They're not doing it.
So, I mean, it's an old clip just as much as the Biden one was. This is from November 18th of 2021. So even almost a year ago, he was saying this and he wasn't wrong. But remember, he's crazy. He's a nutso. Look at that Republican. Oh, that guy he's putting people back in school. God forbid that he actually is doing his job, that he could read data and look at the science of which we are told to all follow, that we were all told as Republicans and conservatives that we're crazy and nutso conspiracy theorists, that we don't deal with reality. And literally, I mean, every month when something comes out about COVID-19 now, it turns back. If you just look at the recordings of a lot of people's channels, they're going, oh shit, they were right. Oh man, they were correct. Oh, look at that. Who could have figured? And who was wrong? The Biden administration. Who lied? The Biden administration. Who lied? Dr. Anthony Fauci. Who lied? All those CDC people. Shapiro stressed that false narratives such as this, carefully maintain and advance the Biden administration, stand to undermine faith in American institutions and experts. I mean, yeah, that's an understatement. When a scientific institution alleges something in concert with the government that is issuing laws to get you to do a thing, and it turns out these things are lies, people distrust in the institution is going to skyrocket, which is why a lot of people, same thing with the mainstream media, they lie consistently to our faces. So that's why faith in Americans, or faith of Americans in the mainstream media, is basically at one of its lowest points, I think, in American history, because of all the lying they've done. And the same thing's going to happen here, where next time something rolls out, we don't want to believe a damn thing the government says because you lied to us before. It's like the boy who cried wolf. In the Tuesday episode, Shapiro noted that the vaccination rollout initially relied upon a narrative buttressed by two major claims. The first claim here was that there was robust data on the lowering of risk of death, particularly in those who were old and vulnerable from baseline COVID. Shapiro suggested this was a fairly strong case since a large percent of the population is obese and there are plenty of geriatrics. The second rationale made the case largely on the basis of Pfizer claims and Moderna claims that taking the vaccines would lower transmission rates, which was true. That's what they stated, although it doesn't do that. Accordingly, it would be necessary to get vaccinated to bring an end to the pandemic and slow or curb the spread of the virus. Shapiro noted that the media seized upon the big pharmaceutical companies' claims in the fall and winter of 2020. That was the data that was most of us used because of that available data. That was the data Shapiro relied upon when he decided to get a double vaccination, as well as when his subsequent advised others to follow. And I believe he said something like his family got double vax as well. But my thing is, he's kind of getting ripped by people for pushing the vaccination. And in terms of statistics, all you can do is look at the data and take that data, analyze it, and then come to some sort of decision based on that data. Sometimes that decision making is going to be bad. Sometimes you're given just bad data. Sometimes you're given good data and you still make bad decisions with it. But hell, you got to make a decision. The decision that he made, in my mind, and the message that he was pushing was correct with the data that was given. As he stated, we were all lied to because We were told one thing and it did absolutely another. And it was pushed for a long time. Biden has like 50 booster shots and he still got COVID. You had Ron DeSantis talking about other countries and other areas around the world that had the most vaccinations and they still had to shut down. They still had to do this. So we were very aware early on that this could be transmitted. But even if it could still be transmitted, I think it was still good for some Americans to still get the vaccination to help prevent that impact of COVID-19 that it would have upon them if they otherwise didn't have the vaccine. And I think Ben probably feels the same way now in terms of the vaccination, that it would still be good to get vaccinated if you are vulnerable, but it's still not going to stop you from catching it, but it will lower, hopefully, the symptoms for you so you don't have it as bad. Again, that was the main reason why I got the vaccination. Hell, I think you could look back at my old episodes from 2 years ago talking about that. But folks, that is the Bald Brad Show. Ben Shapiro still speaking truth, still pushing things that are true. Statistics will change. That does happen, folks. And with that being said, show us some love by hitting that like and subscribe button. And I'll see you back here tomorrow here on the Bald Brad Show.